There's a very specific, almost cinematic image that comes to mind when we talk about nonprofits or faith-based circles. We picture the hero.
The protagonist, yeah, the main character energy.
Exactly. The person trekking through the jungle, the doctor in the disaster zone, the speaker on the stage. They're the ones, doing the real work.
Right.
And in that movie, in our heads, everyone else just sort of fades into the background.
The people back home, the ones writing the checks. We have these soft, passive labels for them, supporters or helpers.
It creates a hierarchy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have the A-team, the active players, and then you have this passive audience.
Just tossing a coin in the hat to keep the show going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today, we are doing a deep dive into a text that takes that entire assumption and just, it flips it upside down. We're looking at a document called Send Shared Obedience and Spiritual Partnership.
And this document it's aggressive.
It is. It totally challenges the idea that sending is just some secondary administrative task.
It really does. It frames sending not as a logistical necessity, like, paying the gas bill,
Right.
but as a decisive spiritual act. The core argument here is that we've created a false hierarchy of obedience. We assume that going, the movement, the travel, is the highest form of devotion.
But this text argues that sending is an equal form of obedience.
Exactly, just with a different assignment.
And that's the hook.
Yeah.
The idea that staying put can be just as frontline as going. So our mission on this deep dive is to unpack that. We're going to look at the difference between, say, charity and covenant partnership.
And we'll dig into some surprising historical stuff. King David, the Apostle Paul.
Even the psychology of control.
And I think the tension we need to hold, throughout this is exactly what you hinted at. We naturally admire those who leave. It's dramatic.
It's visible.
But this dive asks a harder question. What if the people staying behind, if they're doing it right, are actually in the trenches too? What does it look like to be a sender who isn't just a spectator?
Well, let's start by dismantling that hierarchy. The source material kicks off with this rope holder analogy. I've heard it before, but this text really leans into the grit of it.
Yeah, this comes from the story of William Carey. He's often called the father of modern missions. We're talking late 1700s.
So long time ago.
A very long time ago. He was preparing to go to India from England. And you have to understand, in 1793, a ship to India wasn't a business trip.
It was not a study abroad semester.
No, it was often a death sentence. Disease, hostility, isolation, communication took months. So Carey gathers his circle, and he famously tells them, "I will go down into the pit if you will hold the rope."
It's such a visceral image. You're descending into a deep, dark mine.
Precisely. And the argument the source makes is about the physics of that. The person holding the rope isn't just helping. They're not just offering encouragement from the side.
No.
They are the lifeline. If their grip fails, the scission fails. The climber dies.
And if you just think about that physically, if I'm holding a rope with a grown man's weight on it, my hands are burning. My back is straining. I'm anchored to that spot. I can't just, walk away and grab a coffee.
That's the point exactly. The text uses this to argue that there's no spiritual caste system. God doesn't measure obedience by your geography. He measures it by faithfulness to your assignment.
But we don't really talk like that, do we? Not in modern philanthropy. We use language like donors and beneficiaries. It's so corporate.
It's transactional. I give you money, you do the good thing, I get a tax receipt.
Yeah.
And the source argues that support language implies passivity. If I support a sports team, I'm on the couch, I'm eating nachos, I am not sweating.
Right.
But if I'm holding a rope, my muscles are burning. I am physically tethered to the outcome. The concept is shared obedience.
The psychological impact of that shift must be huge.
Yeah.
If you're just a supporter, you can check out, you write the check, you're done.
Yep.
But if you're holding the rope,
You're vigilant, you're engaged, and think about the person going. If they see their senders as just ATM machines, they feel isolated. The weight of the world is on their shoulders.
but if they see them as rope holders, they realize they aren't alone. They're just the visible tip of a much larger spear.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's get into the nitty-gritty of this. Does the source actually back this up biblically? You mentioned King David.
Yes, this is one of the strongest parts of the research. It deals with what the text calls the economics of faithfulness. It points to a story in 1 Samuel 30. It's a crisis moment.
What are the stakes here?
The stakes are maximum. The Amalekites have raided David's camp, burned it to the ground, and stolen everyone's wives and children.
So everything.
Everything. So David rallies his 600 men for a desperate pursuit. But they reach this river, the Bezor Ravine, and about 200 of his men they collapse.
Hit the wall.
physically broken, can't take another step. So David tells them to stay behind and guard the supplies, the baggage. The other 400 keep going to fight.
So you have the goers, who are fighting, and the stayers, who are watching the stuff.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. The 400 fighters win. They destroy the Amalekites, rescue everyone, and take massive spoils of war. Gold, livestock, everything.
Total victory.
Total victory. But when they get back to the 200 guys by the river, human nature kicks in. Some of the fighters say, hey, we did the fighting. These guys just sat here. They get their families back, sure, but they don't get a cut of the loot.
Which, sounds like standard logic. I did the work. I get the bonus. Eat what you kill.
Of course. It appeals to our sense of merit. But David steps in and sets the statute for Israel. He says, the share of the man who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who fought in the battle.
An even split. 50-50.
Even split. The theological principle there is what the source calls the supply line principle. Reward is based on faithfulness to your role, not proximity to the fight.
That completely reframes the check writer role. It's not just funding. It's guarding the supply line.
It means the sender shares in the victory. In God's economy, there's no diminished return for the support role.
That's a powerful precedent. But the source also jumps forward to the New Testament, to the Apostle Paul. And this part seemed, a bit more aggressive.
It is aggressive, and the logic is brilliant. We're in Romans 15. Paul is saying the Gentile, or non-Jewish believers, are actually in debt to the Jewish believers.
Unpack that. What kind of debt? Giving is supposed to be generous, not a repayment.
It's a spiritual to material exchange rate. Paul's logic is this. The Jewish people held the original covenant. The Messiah came through them. So if the Gentiles have shared in their spiritual blessings, the gospel, they are morally obligated to serve them in material blessings.
That's not charity.
It is the absolute opposite of charity. Charity is optional. Paul is saying, no, this is a covenantal exchange. You receive the gospel, now you fund the mission.
The word responsibility keeps coming up. It changes the dynamic from, I hope you do well over there, to...
We are doing this together. It implies if the sender doesn't send, they're not just stingy, they're defaulting on a debt.
And if we look at the book of Philippians, which the source uses a lot, this idea gets elevated even further. Paul uses a very specific Greek word, right? Koinonia.
Right, which we usually translate as fellowship. But fellowship today is kind of a soft word.
Coffee and donuts in the church basement.
Yeah, it's social. But koinonia in the first century was often a business term. It meant partnership, shared liability.
Like a joint venture.
Exactly. If two people entered koinonia for a shipping business and the ship sank, they both lost money. If it came in with a profit, they both got rich. It's skin in the game.
So when Paul uses that word for his donors, he's saying, you're my business partners in the gospel.
It's gritty. It implies his suffering is their suffering. And this leads to this beautiful transformation in the text. When the Philippians sent him money, listen to the language Paul uses in Philippians 4:18. He calls their gift a fragrant offering and an acceptable sacrifice.
Those are temple terms. That's worship language.
Precisely. He is elevating the act of writing a check from an administrative task to a liturgical one. He's saying that when you fund the mission, you're performing a priestly duty. You are worshiping.
That's a massive shift. It turns a bank transfer into an act of the altar. It's not just keeping the lights on, it's incense.
It is. And he also tells them, you shared in my troubles. Not you paid for my troubles, but you shared in them. Distance does not equal detachment.
I want to pivot to the how of this, the mechanics. The source makes a really interesting point about prayer. I think we often treat prayer as like the consolation prize. Oh, I can't give, so I'll just pray.
Right, the polite gesture, thoughts and prayers, the least we can do.
But the source calls prayer labor and warfare. It treats it as something heavy.
Yeah, it connects back to Romans 15, where Paul asks the church to strive together with him in prayer. The Greek word is agonizomai. It's where we get the word agonize.
A wrestling match.
It's physical, it's exhausting. He's not asking for a quick, God bless Paul, before dinner.
He's asking them to enter the ring.
The source argues prayer is the supply line of spiritual power. If the rope holder stops holding, the climber falls. If the sender stops praying, the missionary is exposed. It's a frontline activity.
And then there's the money aspect again. There's a deeper psychological insight here that I found really compelling. The source calls it obedience under constraint.
This is one of the most profound points for me. Think about the person who goes. They're active, they see the faces, they have agency.
Right. They're in the mix. They can see the cause and effect.
Now think about the sender. They wire the funds, and then What? Silence? They have to wait? They can't control the daily outcome? They have to trust? The source argues this constraint is actually a spiritual discipline.
That's interesting. It's almost harder in a way, isn't it? To care so much but have your hands tied.
It shapes your character. It forces you to trust God and trust your partner in a way that is incredibly difficult for our control-freak natures. It breaks the idol of control.
So the act of sending isn't just about the money reaching the field.
It's about what the act of releasing that money does to the sender's heart. It trains you to let go.
Let's zoom out a bit. We've talked about the individual, but the source also looks at the corporate sender, the church as a whole. And it points to the church in Antioch in Acts 13 as the model. Why Antioch?
Because Antioch represents the shift to a global mission, and it provides the blueprint. In Acts 13, you don't have Paul and Barnabas deciding to go on a trip. You have the church leaders worshiping and fasting together, and the Holy Spirit speaks to the group.
So it wasn't an individual career move, it was corporate obedience.
Correct. The church at Antioch sent them. They were the launch pad. The source argues the local church is meant to be an incubator for mission, and this has a very practical application for church budgets.
Oh, right. The first fruits versus leftovers concept.
Yeah.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Yes. The source challenges churches to look at their budgets. Usually, mission is what's left over. We pay the staff, we fix the roof, we have the pizza party, and then whatever's left, we send out.
The crumbs.
Right. But the Antioch model suggests mission should be the first line item, foundational. If the church exists for the mission, what theologians call the missio Dei, then the budget should reflect that.
Missio Dei, let's define that, because that sounds like a big seminary term, but the concept is beautiful.
It's Latin for the mission of God. It just means mission isn't something the church invented. It starts with the Trinity. The Father sends the Son, the Father and Son send the Spirit.
God is a sending God.
So when the church sends, we aren't starting a program. We're jumping into the flow of who God is. We're joining God's nature.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
It's like the heartbeat of the faith. We aren't recruiting God to our cause. We're getting swept up in His.
Exactly. And it changes the tone from duty to privilege.
So if we pull all these threads together, we're moving from a model of charity, which is optional, hierarchical, distant,
to a model of covenant, which is obligatory, equal, and relational.
and for you listening, this fundamentally shifts how you see your own role. If I give to a cause or I pray for a cause, I'm not just a nice person helping out.
No, you are a co-laborer, a partner. You share in the reward and you share in the suffering.
It really creates a sense of dignity for the role of the sender. I think about people who feel guilty that they aren't the ones going. They feel like they're not radical enough. They see the hero and think, I'm just the accountant.
And this text just wipes that guilt away. It says, no, your assignment is just different, but the standard is the same. Faithfulness. If your assignment is to hold the rope, are your hands blistered? Are you holding tight?
It democratizes the mission. Everyone has a role, and every role is critical. Which leads us to that final provocative thought from the source material. I think this is a question everyone needs to sit with.
The question is this. If the impact of your faith is not measured by where you go, but by how faithfully you stand where you are assigned, are you currently a spectator or a partner?
That hits home. Spectator or partner. It's not about geography. It's about the posture of your heart.
Exactly. You can be 1,000 miles away and be a partner. It's about whether you are holding the rope.
Well, that is definitely something to chew on. This has been a fascinating look at the theology of sending. Thanks for helping us navigate this.
My pleasure.
And to you listening, thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.